This is R1 and 3 Autoethnography with your host, Steven. On today's episode, we have Ari, a College of Education student here at the university. Today we're going to be speaking about hypomania, depression, and more. On this podcast, we talk about our lived experiences with mental illness. So before we get started, you got to know that we are not medical professionals, and you should see your doctor if you're concerned about your mental well-being. So you've been diagnosed with bipolar type 2 and ADHD, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just making sure. Tell me about how these conditions are affecting your classes or school in general.
I find it really hard to focus on anything or do my work. It's like I know I have all these things that I have to do and then I just can't do them, which sounds ridiculous because everybody's always like, just get up and do it. You can do it. Just get up and do it. It's not that hard, but it is that hard because I can't. It's like I know I have to do the dishes and I know I have to do this unit plan and I know I have to do my assignments and I know I have to clean my room and I just can't. I just get way too overwhelmed and I can't do any of that stuff and I just sit there.
It feels like you literally just can't do it, right? No matter how frustrated you get with yourself or however much effort you put in, you just can't do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the most challenging parts is that people can't really see how hard you're trying.
Yeah.
So in terms of your classes, would you say that you're a good student?
No, I want to talk about in my first year of university, I came to college with a full ride scholarship for all 4 years. And I went through a manic episode and I just didn't care about my grades and I was using things that weren't good for me just because I wanted to. And my grades weren't high enough and I lost my full ride scholarship and now I'm on student loans, which has been really hard for me to deal with and get over because it's something so big and huge that I had that I lost. And I feel like I can't just blame it on my mental illness, but at the same time, I have to realize that I wasn't in my right mind.
And what was going on when that happened? What were you feeling? What were you thinking?
When I lost my scholarship?
Yeah, sort of, but also when you were manic and that kind of contributed to you losing your scholarship.
I didn't even know I was manic because I didn't know I had bipolar disorder at the time. I didn't realize till afterwards when my doctor told me that was a manic episode. I just felt excited and happy all the time and I just wanted to do everything. I guess not necessarily happy. Some days I would be really excited and happy and some days I would just be really angry about the littlest things and I would explode on my roommates about nothing. One day my roommate ate the last of my bread and I lost it on her. I completely freaked out on her. I was sending her huge long text messages. I felt like a crazy person.
Did you ever get your slice of bread back?
No.
Oh, yeah. Well, that kind of makes sense then. So you didn't know until you were in second year, right?
Yeah, so I guess I was in second year when I found out I had bipolar disorder, and that was really hard for me because it was relieving, I guess, to know that I could fix it and that there was something that I could do to make it better and that it wasn't all my fault the way I was acting and there was a reason for it. But at the same time, that's a lifelong diagnosis. You have that diagnosis forever. And the stigma when people hear that you have that diagnosis and the way that they look at you and think about you is you're crazy.
Yeah, no, I can definitely agree with that. Yeah, so why did it take so long, I guess, for you to get checked out?
I really wanted to get checked out. I wanted to get institutionalized when I was in high school because I was really suicidal. I remember there was a specific time, and my parents didn't want to put me in an institution. They just thought that, I think since they're from a small town, I don't think they meant to hurt me, but I think that they just thought it was something that I made up in my head. like something that wasn't really there, or something that I got from TV, or like just because it was a trend to want to kill yourself, basically.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what they thought was going on. But I remember there was a time where I was at the bottom of the stairs and I was like screaming that I wanted to kill myself, and I wanted them to put me in an institution, and they still wouldn't. And then I kind of realized I needed help because I found my little sister's diary, and she wrote in her diary to God, asking him to help me because she didn't want to lose me, and she loved me. And that kind of really fucked me up, because I realized that it's not just about me, and my actions affect other people, and that there are people that love me and depend on me. Like, she's my little sister.
So is that sort of like what was going on in your home life at the time? Like, you were just manic quite often, or just an unpleasant person to be around?
Yeah, it was one of those two things. Like, I actually was, one time when I was manic, I took my brother out for a ride on a side-by-side, and I ended up rolling it.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and I didn't realize until now, really, that I was manic at the time, and that's why I was being so reckless and impulsive and being a complete idiot. And other than that, I would just be like really angry, or I always used to fight with my mom like really bad. We used to clash, and there's other reasons for that too, like reasons that have to do with my dad and stuff. But yeah, I feel like mostly I was either really, really depressed and not wanting to get out of bed, or I was manic.
At the time, how did you interpret that mania or that depression?
I guess I kind of just felt like there was something wrong with me. Like, I couldn't understand why it was so easy for everybody else, or why it seemed like it was so easy for everybody else, and why it was just like so hard for me to, I guess, cope with it. And I just thought that the mania was just who I was. I didn't know that it was because I was manic. I thought that that was just who I was, and that who I was kind of sucked. At first it was really hard for me to accept, but I feel like with all of this like support that I've gotten through my doctor at the university, who is awesome, that it's started to be something a little bit more positive for me, but I definitely still struggle with it. I just think that the way that I look at it now is a lot differently than the way that I looked at it in high school.
How is it different?
Like, in high school, I just kind of accepted that this is who I am, and that nothing's going to change that, and that I just kind of have to find a way to deal with it and look at the positives. And I just, when I got older, now I kind of feel like it is something that I can change with work. I just have to be willing to put the work in.
Yeah, and what was I going to say? You had to put the work in, and is that something that you're doing now?
I'm trying to be a lot more open about my mental illness. Like, I actually have told some people that I work with, like at my school, about it, which was terrifying because I was so afraid they would look at me like I can't do my job. But I just wanted them to know how hard it is for me to be there some days. What
was it that made you want to, I don't know, be a little more open about it? Because it almost sounds like it was something that you were kind of trying to push down for a while.
I just want to be happy. I just really, really, really want to be happy. And I feel like the only way to do that is to try and deal with this and be better for the people around me. I just feel like, I don't know, I forget what I was going to say.
No, that's fine. You talked about how it was like scary to admit this to your coworkers. What do you think? What do you think someone thinks when you say, I have bipolar, or I have ADHD?
ADHD, I feel like, is more accepted, I guess. Not like necessarily, like, I'm not saying that it's not hard to tell people you have ADHD, like it is, and there's definitely a stigma that comes with that. But I felt like for me, the way that I perceive it, I was more afraid of what they would think of me because of the bipolar diagnosis. Like, when I think about how bipolar people are portrayed, like in the media or in TV shows, they seem like they're crazy and they do all these crazy things, especially like people who have like psychosis with their mania. Yeah. And I just don't want to be perceived as someone who needs to be institutionalized when I am fully capable of living my day-to-day life and I am fully capable of doing my job. And on days that I'm not capable of doing my job, I don't go.
Yeah. So how do you think this, media portrayal affects the outlook for people who do have bipolar and are struggling with it and not able to speak about it?
I think the media can be a tool that really helps educate people, but I also think that it can hurt people in the way that it portrays people for entertainment purposes. Like, this isn't a podcast about like TV shows, but in particular,
it could be.
In particular on Shameless, when one of the characters was portrayed as bipolar, I felt like it was really like weird for me to see because I knew I had the same mental health diagnosis and it wasn't the same for me. Like, their experience and my experience wasn't the same. And I felt like that meant that I had to have the same experience as them, which is ridiculous because everybody's mental health journey is different. And I feel like the media only portrays things one way. It's very one-sided, and that's not the way that it is for everybody.
No, it's always on like this spectrum, but yeah, I can definitely agree that stigma is fucking ridiculous, to put it. We are people, but as the media portrays it, it's like you're crazy, you're not dependable, you're just not someone who's safe to be around, and I don't think that's right.
Yeah, like you're erratic, you could hurt yourself or hurt somebody like near you, when most of the time, like, I am impulsive and reckless, but I'm not dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Before you got treatment, you could kind of see those patterns starting to happen, right?
Yeah, and if I didn't get treatment, it probably would have been a lot worse. Like, that's what they told me, that it's just going to get worse the older that you get with bipolar disorder, especially if you're not getting treatment. And they actually caught it in me pretty early. Like, I was 19 or 20. Like, that's pretty young to get a bipolar diagnosis, which is really good and positive because it means that they can help me, but it also means I have to be on meds for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I feel that, man. I got my diagnosis, I think, when I was 19, or it's tough knowing that this is something that you're going to struggle with for a while. And it's also tough knowing that you might be perceived differently just because of something that's out of your control. And that's what really, really irks me, because it's hard to explain why one day you just feel like this incredible person, and the next day you're just laying in bed and you can't do anything. You can't be you, if that makes sense. How do your depressive episodes affect you?
They're pretty bad, especially like since I have bipolar 2, then the depression is always way worse than the mania. I can't do anything. I just honestly turn the shower on and lay, and I don't have a bathtub, it's just a shower, and I just lay on the floor of my shower in the hot water for hours, and that's all I can do, and that's all I feel like doing, and I can't do anything else, or I can't get out of bed, or I just feel like my opinion of myself is so low, and I want to feel in control, which is where I guess like self-harm comes into play. Like, I used to do it a lot in high school, but I was good for a while, and then I went through an episode pretty recently where I did it again, and that made me feel even worse because it made me feel like I failed.
What did you get out of self-harm?
I think it made me feel in control of something, and it also was a redirection for the pain that I felt inside. It was like pain that I could understand because it was pain on the outside that I caused, that I was in control of.
And did you feel like you deserved to be in pain?
Sometimes, yeah. I felt like it was easier to be in pain and to be sad than it is to be happy. So I feel like, for me personally, I will always choose pain and sadness over happiness because it's all I've ever known.
And I guess, how does it change your outlook then when you go from your depressive episodes to your hypomania?
It's pretty fucking whack.
I'm gonna be honest, it's kind of fun for me, but it's not fun at the same time.
It depends what kind of mania. Like, sometimes when I'm manic, I feel so confident and like I'm on top of the world and I want to do everything and I'm so productive and I stay up all hours and I rearrange my room at 4 a.m. and I clean everything and everything just looks so good and it's so awesome. Or I go on these huge spending sprees where I buy all this stuff and then all of a sudden I'm in debt and it's like, nobody knows about this debt. Like, nobody knows how bad my spending habits are. They're ridiculous. And sometimes when I'm manic, that's when the anger comes in, which is scary for me because my anger is like, it's so explosive. And anger is something that I often turn to, I guess. But it also scares me. Like, since when I was growing up, my anger was so explosive and like detrimental. I feel like now that I'm older, I'm almost afraid of being angry. So when I do get manic, that scares me because I'm so afraid of myself.
Yeah. So it's almost like there's no winning, right?
Yeah. It's like I'm either really sad or really angry.
Yeah, I definitely feel you when you say that you go on these extravagant spending sprees, because I've done, or I do that too. I have an episode where I talk about buying skates or some stupid stuff. But yeah, it's like, I don't know how to put it into words. For me, it's like everything just seems like brighter. Like you're just on this high. Like everything feels good, and you can do everything. You can do anything, and you feel like you're the smartest person in the room. You feel like, or I feel like, just good. And going from like a hard depression, it seems like you've done something to make yourself better, almost. But I don't know if that's the same experience with you. Like, how would you say you kind of see the world when you're manic?
I think when I'm manic, I don't know. I feel like the world is on my side, I guess, sometimes. And I feel like I can do anything or I can be anything that I want. And I feel like it doesn't matter what anybody else does because I don't give a shit because I'm fucking awesome. And that's just the way that it's going to be. And everybody else can just suck it, kind of, I guess.
Yep, I definitely understand that. God, but it's so weird going from like this depressive episode where you feel like you're just this terrible person to going to that, right?
Yeah, like I said, when I get manic, I get really angry. There was one time in particular, 2 years ago, we went on a vacation, me and my family, for Christmas, and on the way home, I just like completely lost it on my stepdad, like, who is my dad at the time. I just lost it, like, and I told him horrible things, like that he wasn't good enough for my mom and he didn't treat my mom good enough and that he was a bad father. And I think I was lashing out because I was so angry that he didn't get me help. But it escalated into all these other things. And I still to this day look back on that and feel so, so guilty because he's my dad and I love him. And I hurt him so bad. Like he's told me how much what I said hurt him. And I wish I could take it back. But at the time when I was saying it, I felt like I was right and I was in control and I was telling the truth, and I just went off and I couldn't control what I said. Which sounds so stupid, but it just literally just came out of my mouth. And then after I said it and I was reflecting on it after I came back to Saskatoon from visiting my family, and I was like, man, I think you made a really big mistake.
Yeah. But like you were saying at the time, there wasn't like a thought process, right? It was just kind of what felt right.
Yeah. Like I just said what I felt at the time was true, and I just wanted to hurt him because I wanted him to hurt like I feel like I hurt, which is unfair. It's
definitely easy to see how you can hurt people when you aren't taking care of it, right?
Yeah, it's really easy because you're not in control of your emotions. And mania can be this high, like we've talked about, and it can be productivity and it can be all these other amazing things. But at the same time, it can be horrible and it can hurt people that you care about, and it can hurt you.
So before you got diagnosed, did you kind of internalize all that?
Like think it was my fault?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, definitely.
Or I guess, do you still think that it's your fault?
Yeah, I still, even though I know I have bipolar disorder, I still think that I should be able to control my emotions and I should be able to control what comes out of my mouth. And when I hurt people that I care about, I happen to have good people around me that have all forgiven me for the things that I've said. But what if I didn't? Because like I'm always putting that on myself. I'm always thinking about everything that I said or everything that I did and thinking about how I should have been able to control that and how I should have been able to be better. But I just wasn't.
Did you have people tell you that?
That I should just be better?
Yeah.
Yeah. That I have had lots of people tell me that my actions affect other people, which I know, obviously. But I guess I just feel like they didn't understand what was going on inside my mind because I didn't even understand. I still don't understand what's going on inside my mind. I still feel like out of control sometimes, and I feel like it's only going to get worse as I get older and go into the real world. Because in university, like you said, everybody's pretty forgiving right now because you're in school and that's hard. And everybody in the university, like all the doctors and all the mental health supports are really good at the U of S, and they try really hard to not stigmatize mental health. But in the real world, in the working world, that's not the way it is.
Not at all. No.
I also feel like in the real world, so many people, it's a fad or a trend to have a mental illness. So many people are saying that they have these mental illnesses and they're discrediting all the real people that do have those mental illnesses, and they're wearing it like it's a fashion trend or it's something cool about them, when I would never go, like I am right now, but I would never go around broadcasting that I have a mental illness or that I'm bipolar, or I would never use it as something to get me more out of life or to get people's sympathy, which is what I find some people are doing, especially on TikTok.
Oh, yeah, I agree, man. Like, I think on one hand, it's positive that there's a lot more conversations about mental illness, but I don't think it's, I think it can be harmful too. Like you were saying, that people are just like wearing it like a fashion trend. Like, you know, it's a lot more than just showing one symptom once. It's this lifelong chronic condition that if you don't know, you don't know, right? Yeah.
And people don't understand it either. Like people don't understand that your mind is literally against you. Like the one thing that's supposed to be in control of your actions and is supposed to empower you is literally against you. It's sick. It's just like somebody who has diabetes and you need to take this medicine so that your brain, whatever, produces enough serotonin because your brain doesn't produce enough serotonin or whatever it is. that, and I feel like people don't get that, or they don't treat it like it's something that's real and something that I'm really going through at the time.
Mm-hmm. I think the thing that makes me the most angry with some of these trends is how people can say, like, I can be a little ADHD sometimes, or I can be a little bipolar sometimes. Like, it's not something like you can just put down. It's there.
I've had people say to me, oh, like my mood is so bipolar sometimes. Or my sister had this boyfriend and he said something along the lines of, he made a joke and I was like, oh, well, why did you say that? And he's like, I don't know, I'm just bipolar like that. Like, right to my face. And like, I just wanted to hit him. Like, I was so angry that he said that to me. I didn't hit him, obviously. I didn't say anything back, but I should have. I should have jumped down his throat. I should have been like, what makes you say that? Why would you say that? It's not just something that you can use as an excuse.
Yeah, definitely. How do you think, like, mental illness should be approached then?
I think it should be treated just like somebody who has diabetes. I think it should be normalized. I think that people who are really sick and really have it, and people who aren't just saying they have it to get out of things, I feel like they deserve recognition and they deserve to be treated like they're real and they're valid and that everything that they're going through is true and they deserve to be believed.
So do you think someone needs a diagnosis almost to be validated, or?
I think it helps. I think that it helps knowing that it's not all in your head. And also a diagnosis helps because, as scary as it is, you could think you have one thing, but you actually have something completely different because you're self-diagnosing yourself. So how do you really know unless you get a professional's opinion? But that isn't to say that all the people that aren't diagnosed aren't valid, because they are. And for whatever reason that they're not diagnosed. They still deserve to be treated like they're worth something, as long as they aren't using it as an excuse to get out of work, or they're not just like saying like, oh, I'm depressed, like just because they know it'll get them out of it.
I don't know. It almost seems like it's being destigmatized, but in a way that like everyone feels like they have a condition, which that's not saying, because that's not saying that might not be valid, because, you know, COVID is hard for everyone, but saying that everyone can be a little ADHD or a little bipolar, that really pisses me off. Yeah.
And I've had parents or people in my life saying like, oh, everybody feels like that sometimes. It doesn't mean you have something.
But that's not true.
Yeah.
It's hard to, I guess, not compare yourself to other people and to just like know what you're feeling is true. Because there's even times now where I think that I don't have ADHD or I don't have bipolar just because, you know, I'm medicated. I do all this stuff, but I don't know how to make it so that people can realize that mental illness is real, but not like promote it as something that everyone needs to have, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like, what did you just say?
I honestly don't remember.
When two people with ADHD get together.
That's usually how these go, man. I don't know. It's relieving to know that you're just not the only one that feels a certain way. Because I remember earlier when we were talking about some of the trauma that we went through. That's not going to be on this podcast. It's just nice to have someone that understands. But I know that a lot of people might not have that. So how do you think people can, I don't know, self-regulate or self-validate?
I just think it's important to make sure to tell yourself like that you are valid and that you are worth something, and that just because your mind is against you, it doesn't mean that you're not important. And that can be really hard to tell yourself those things and to feel those things. So I think the most important part of self-regulation is to always just like not give up on yourself, because you're important and you matter. And if you give up on yourself, So everybody else is going to give up on you too.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you're the one that needs to sort through all this, right?
You can't, as much as it's easier to put it on somebody else, you can't. And I'm such a hypocrite because there's so much of my trauma that I haven't worked through and I don't want to work through and I refuse to deal with it. But it's my trauma and it makes it hard to get into a relationship with somebody else romantically because I have all of this stuff I haven't worked through and I know I need to work through it and nobody can do it for me and I just need to do it by myself. It's just a matter of putting the work in.
So, I guess if you are going through something, I want to say that it might not exactly be all of your fault, and I hope that you can find people who understand you, I guess. It's a take-home message.
Yeah, I think that it's important to remember to fight for yourself, even when you feel like you can't. And I think that my take-home message to you is that as alone as you feel, there are a million other people who feel just as alone as you, and that you can get help if you want, and that you are brave enough to take that next step, and you are brave enough not to end your life, and you are brave enough to do this, because we are, so are you.
Yeah, that's good. So I guess that's everything then?
I think so.
Okay, cool. Thanks for coming on and saying stuff, I guess. I don't really have an ending message ever. I usually just cut it off. So hopefully you guys liked this episode. Make sure to check out our website in the description and subscribe on whatever platform you're on. You'll also find some resources and references we used for this episode in the description. And once again, we are not medical professionals and you should see your doctor if you're concerned about your mental well-being. We'll see you next time.